What up, Midgard? My name is Daniel Cumming, and welcome to the Rune Yoga Embodying Magic podcast. Now, this podcast is probably the first one I've done so far where I'm actually maybe feeling a little bit nervous. Now, I have had a break from doing the podcast for a little while. I got on a pretty good roll for the first few, and then, life gets in the way. And yeah, I've had some other priorities. You'll see obviously a lot of that if you're following me on Instagram and Facebook. If you're not, you can just head to www.rune.yoga and you can find all my social links in there. Add me on Facebook, on Instagram. Otherwise, runeyoga.org, same website. But if you've been following me on Instagram and Facebook, you'll see that I've started to speak about my story and how I launched Rune Yoga and how I got to where I am. And the reason because of that is because I've recently launched with a good friend of mine, Nicole Kargagis. We've launched Ritual Embodiment which is a yoga teacher training program and a whole school of kind of yoga and magic mixed together and really embracing, the esoteric side of yoga, but also the physical side. And just embracing the embodiment of whatever it is that you do and learning how to find your unique way of expressing that. It's really interesting. I won't go into it too much here. But the reason I started telling my story is that Nicole mentioned that a lot of people, especially on the coast where I live, that have heard of the Rune Yoga that I've been doing, and although it is still in its, early stages of development, I've been, testing it out at festivals around Australia. A lot of people don't understand what it is. And it is tricky to explain because it is based on ancient principles and concepts and practices, but it's also got a lot of new elements that really just there's nothing much else out there to compare it to. So it's tricky to explain to people. So what she suggested is just telling my story, which is a really great idea, I think, because I've been meaning to do it for a while, especially about the concept that I'm about to talk about a bit more. But what I've been doing is explaining kind of how I got into yoga, started, when I was getting into martial arts and Tai Chi, and that introduced me to, movement with breath and meditation, and how that kind of weaved into a lot of weird circumstances that were happening around my time at that point in my life, involving a snake dream. And yeah, so you go to my Facebook and Instagram, you can read it. But I guess why I'm doing this podcast now, because I actually had I've got a list of podcasts that I need to do because I've had questions that people asked me about previous ones and prompted. So I had the day free today to do a podcast, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it about the Scarlet Lover because people have been asking me about it because of what I've been posting on my story of what I've been telling. But I've kind of hit a bit of a roadblock because where I'm at in the story, it kind of introduces the concept of the Scarlet Lover, and it really needs to be explained. Otherwise, I feel like the story isn't really going to make a lot of sense, or it's not going to have the kind of impact I want. And because I'm mainly using Instagram and Facebook to do the story, and Instagram especially has a word count. You can't do too many words. It only has a small amount that you can use in one post. I really have to limit what I'm writing, and I want to get on with the story, but I also want to explain this concept of the Scarlet Lover. So I thought doing a podcast would be perfect. So for those who are interested in my story and want to know more about this, especially the Scarlet Lover concept, which I was going to talk about anyway. It's a huge thing. That's probably why I haven't talked about it, right? It's usually the main things that you're interested in, or the things that are most important to you or make you, nervous about doing a podcast about, or the stuff that you really should be doing but don't do because it's so important to you. It's I guess good timing to do it now. Now, the concept of the Scarlet Lover is, I guess it's just like anything, right? It's like, I like to think of these concepts, or I guess archetypes in a way, are just a lens that you can observe inner and outer circumstances. So, I talk about mythic thinking a lot, and the idea of, humans as just being these meaning-making machines that, something happens and we need to make meaning of it because we need to rationalize everything because we're humans, and, we can't just be comfortable with chaos, I guess. Me especially, I'm always trying to categorize and make meanings out of everything and overthink everything. So it's just a lens to view things out of, but I think it's a really, really potent lens, And I think it applies to everyone, whether you think of it or not. I think everyone has this kind of concept because, lovers and, romantic relationships are so important to us. And, to have a viewpoint around that really connects it to the magical world, that connects it to the idea of immortality, that connects it to this idea of, just really seeing your lovers or lover as a magical being. And yeah, it sounds really vague, but I'll obviously get into it more. But the first time I've heard of this concept was in a book called Apophis by Michael Kelly, which is an amazing book. Wherever my podcast is, I'll put a link into there. You can go to my website and there'll be links to his work online. He's been one of the most influential authors in anything that I've done. And especially this concept of the Scarlet Lover, I realized was interweaved through my whole life, but I've never had a lens or even a name or concept to view it under. And it's taken me on a really interesting journey, and explaining this concept kind of might explain to you or me, always trying to work it out myself, how I view relationships and why the relationships I've had have been the way they have. So I guess for the last, I don't know how many years, so I guess it was about 8 years ago that I really heard the term, the Scarlet Lover. And I guess ever since then, around about the same time where I found the term of it, it really started to weave into my life consciously, I guess. Well, unconsciously weaved it in, but I was starting to be consciously aware of it. And I've had a mix of, monogamous, polyamorous, open relationships, being completely single and alone, really just immersing myself and being consumed in relationships of all kinds. So it's been a really interesting journey up until this point, and especially most recently, my, longest relationship so far, which was about 3.5, close to 4 years, recently ending in a really beautiful way. And it's really left me to reflect on this concept again. And it's really shown up recently strongly in really funny ways. So I'd like to start off with a little snippet from Apophis by Michael Kelly. And it's kind of like a quote. It's actually a couple of little sections I've just kind of mixed together to give a basic description of how Michael Kelly explains it, and I love this lens. It goes, "The philosophy of most romantic relationships remains that of a caveman. It is primarily about possession. In contrast to this possessiveness and union, some of us realize that it is our differences that attract us, and respect our lovers as the unique and wonderful beings they are. They inspire us, they enrich us, but they are not our property, nor are we theirs. The above attitude champions neither monogamy nor promiscuity. Seek the love that best inspires your work and enthuses you. A good lover is a catalyst for self-discovery and self-expression, leading ultimately to self-metamorphosis. Anything less is a mere pastime, a convention, or even a prison. Life is an adventure, a quest, a thing of beauty. Desire is our greatest strength. Love must always be inspirational and liberating, rather than restrictive and confining. It is the beauty of starlight, not the stuffiness of convention." Michael Kelly, Apophis. Whew. So, yeah, that is a really simplified way of how I view relationships, I guess, and what I want from a lover. And this idea of the Scarlet Lover, I guess, is like an ideal of what I have collectively in this lifetime, and apparently in multiple lifetimes, have kind of come to be my sense of desire, right? So, why do we... there's lots of psychological reasons why we desire the things we do. A big thing is about when we come into puberty, whatever pop culture is around, that we're, because we're starting to become sexually active and sexually aware. And whenever that happens, whatever stimuli is around us at that time, we're often drawn to. So usually when, people are around that kind of teenage part of their life, whatever that pop culture is. And when I say pop culture, I mean, if you're into less mainstream culture, it's really whatever you're into and what first sparks that sexual desire. So the Scarlet Lover, for me anyway, and everyone's going to experience this different, and I'd love to start a conversation around this. I'd love to hear more people talk about this and even get some feedback and get some guests on to talk about it and even just respond to questions and address things that people have said about this concept. But for me, it's most definitely a sexual desire. And when I say sexual desire, it's not just a visual attractiveness, because there's a lot more to it. So maybe romantic desire is a better idea, because there doesn't even need to be, sexual acts between myself and the person, I guess, but it's still that energy, you know what I mean? And that desire and that energy can grow from, conversation. So some people that I might not, for some reason be initially attracted to visually, I can, the energy of them, of my desire for them can really grow through, conversation and banter and really great interactions. And there's so many variables and so many levels that that can happen upon. So yeah, I guess romantic interaction, romantic desire, or sexual desire, if you want to put it that way. It's more so like, I guess you could see it as like a concept, some sort of archetypal idea. It's this force, but it's also almost like this its own being, right? And I'm gonna do another podcast. Someone asked me to do a podcast on, are gods or demons or angels or all these entities real? That's another whole conversation. So I'm not going to get into that, whether this Scarlet Lover is actually a real being that exists. It doesn't really matter if I think if something affects the way that you view the world and it affects your actions towards the world and other people, then it's essentially real, right? Because it's affecting how you act in the world. So I guess I'll start by explaining that these concepts exist on a large scale for everyone, and then I guess they exist on a personal scale. And there's also three main concepts that are kind of interweaved for me to explain what the Scarlet Lover actually is, at least for me. And I also need to press that this is really just my perspective on this concept, my lens, and I'm just like you guys. I'm just always just trying to figure out stuff, and my view will change. So this is my current understanding, and because of my, I can't really sum up the Scarlet Lover in particular. I have to relate it to the other things that I kind of interweave it with in my life. That's why I need to mention these concepts as kind of like a whole for them to make sense of what the Scarlet Lover in particular is to me anyway. So there's this concept of, they call it the principle of isolated intelligence, or the Prince of Darkness. So it's this idea of the first consciousness, the idea of the first consciousness in existence that was in nothing, in the void, and then became conscious of itself. And then there's this concept of desire, which I guess is represented by the Scarlet Lover. And it's this idea that, consciousness without desire is not going to move. So consciousness is just there, kind of just existing, and there's no resistance to it. So the idea of desire is not just the desire to move you forward, but also that idea that it's hard to get. And I think that's a large part of human consciousness that, if you've ever been in, the game of like getting to know someone, of dating and things like that, whether we like it or not, like we all talk about, hey, we don't want to, I just don't want to play games, you know what I mean? We all do. We love games, whether we admit it or not. And there's something inside of us that if anything is too easy to obtain, we don't appreciate and value it. And, everyone has been trying to like work with this like stupid thing that happens within us, because we know something is important to us. We know, but just because it's too easy to get, we don't value it. And that can be lovers, that can be items, right? I mean, I've had people say that like they get items or even get like training sessions and things like that, and if they don't pay top dollar for it, they just don't appreciate it. So it's this idea of desire, but also that resistance against that desire. And because this represents this idea of desire, I guess it depends on your sexual orientation to how this will show up for you. So in my own lens, in my own experience, I've only ever had female lovers. So this concept has a real feminine energy to me. But in saying that, it's not always, when you think of feminine, it's not really this whole damsel of distress thing, although that it's definitely shown up in those ways. It's definitely shown up as a kind of like damsel in distress. I'm the knight kind of coming in to teach, and they're my student kind of thing. But it's also come in as that they're very just strong, independent, badass, kind of warrior woman-esque, shield maiden type. So yeah, it's not necessarily one archetype. It's usually showing up in whatever you need at the time. And I think the word need is really key, because I guess we think of, because with desire, it's stuff that we want, right? So yes, this will manifest in ways that we desire because it needs to move us. It needs to move us to action. So if it doesn't represent something that we desire, we're just not going to pay attention to it. But through that desire, it will actually give us, more likely than not, something that we need, not necessarily what we want. So it's often unconscious because we might deep down know that we need something, but we just go for what we want. So it's a catalyst. It uses our desire to give us what we need. I think that's a big thing with the Scarlet Lover. And in saying that, that might be to be alone. Like for me, lately, especially with everything that's been going on with my life, I think it's, due a little period at the moment that maybe I need to be alone more than I need to be with a lover or lovers. And I can still receive that through this Scarlet Lover. So this energy, this concept, this being might just be, throwing things into my life, of making me realize that I need to be alone to, work on my podcast, to work on myself through meditation, work on my room work on my writing, all this kind of stuff that is best facilitated right now in being alone. But to me anyway, that's still the force of the Scarlet Lover coming into my life, giving me what I need, because it might come through. It sounds weird, you learn to be alone through lovers, but it happens that way, for me anyway. And yeah, and embracing that aspect of yourself. And I'll come back to the main two entities as well, because it's important, because we've got this idea of consciousness as what we call the daemon, or that real, the higher self that we hear about in a lot of mythologies or spiritualities. And it's the idea that this is our self ahead of ourself. It's that highest aspiration of what we can be, and it's that idea that it's always changing as well, because it's like what we can see as far as we can see. So I might be able to see the potential of me now, but then in 2 years from now, I'll be able to, I might have achieved close to what that was, but then I'll be able to see so much further of my potential. And then the Scarlet Lover is what can draw you on to achieve that. They're there to move you and help you to aspire to do that, give you a reason to actually get up off your ass and go do something with your life. And because think of all the the craziest stuff you've ever done has probably been for someone that you're interested in romantically. And I love that. I love when I'm so just enamored with someone that it just makes me do dumb stuff. Dumb, air quote. It might seem dumb at a certain time, but it probably is a catalyst for certain things, and just act irrationally, because life would be boring if we don't, yeah. So these two concepts work hand in hand together. And there's this actual third concept that comes into play, at least for me, and it's this concept that in Norse mythology is called the Fylgja, or the fetch, and it's this entity that is a part of your soul, but also separate from your soul, that is often with you through multiple lifetimes, that can be with you in particular, or apparently it can be with like your family, your clan, your kind of it's a hard concept to explain, and probably deserves a podcast of its own. But it's this concept of this guardian-like entity, right? I guess you could say it's like the concept of the holy guardian angel in Christian and Catholic mythology, and it's this being that's just as likely to nurture you and support you and protect you than it is to throw you out into battle and hopefully metaphorically, and to really test you and put you into situations, uncomfortable situations. So discomfort is a key around this idea of both the other and this fetch, this guardian entity. And yeah, it's really there to, I guess, push you to your peak or limits and then draw you out of that right before you hit your limits, just so obviously you survive and grow from that experience. And that's it creates this real polarity, right, of going thrown out into chaos and drawn back into a bit of order, so you can kind of integrate all that chaos that's come back in. And I kind of get confused between the two concepts, I guess, this Scarlet Lover, and also this guardian aspect. I guess the way I understand it now is that there's, these two universal concepts of, the other and the idea of consciousness. But then you've got more personal concepts of like your own daemon, so your own, ultimate ascension of your higher self. And then you've got your, kind of guardian entity, your filia or fetch. And they're kind of your more personal messengers that are more interested, I guess, in your own development, your own soul. Whereas they, I guess, borrow or work with / through these two bigger concepts of, the idea of consciousness, or, when I say the Prince of Darkness, it literally means you have to think of, a principle, the first principle of isolate intelligence, the first consciousness, and not thinking it from a Christian or Catholic perspective as in the devil or any of that. Although, that archetype, the devil archetype that, brings light to humans, or even Prometheus, stealing fire and things like that. There's this, real archetype of bringing consciousness to humans. But I won't get into that. I'll end up going on a tangent maybe another time if you want to hear about my perspective on the, the devil archetype in mythology and things like that. But for now, it's these concepts working together. So this Scarlet Lover will show up for you in ways that are often going to take you out of your comfort zone, the ways that will draw you into situations and into places and with people that you probably wouldn't have had they not come into your life. So yeah, they can very, very much manifest in the flesh, in somebody. And, I've read about and I've also experienced really potent versions of this. So I guess of like a person in my life, a partner, a lover, long term, that has really embodied all these qualities and drawn me onwards to become a better person and really helped me grow. And and in return, I've done my best, obviously, to help them grow as a person. And, because it's got to be mutually both ways. You can't just think of yourself, in my opinion, you can't just think of yourself as like, holier than thou. Everything is just here to serve me. There's got to be an exchange, that you've got to do stuff for the other person. If your lover is going to be a catalyst for your own self-development, self-expression, creation, magical growth, you've got to give them something back. Like whether you're actually giving back to, that actual person, or even just to that concept, you've got to give back. And when I say give back, that's also probably going to be quite a personal experience as well, because I feel like through your lovers or through your experience with the Scarlet Lover, they're probably going to want something different depending on, what you have planned for your life, what they have planned for your life, you know what I mean? So giving back, I guess, is some sort of exchange of energy, and that could mean a lot of different things. But I think you start to intuitively feel when something is out of balance and when you're not doing your bit. And I mean, giving back could be actually just doing the work that they're trying to get you to do. So, I mean, like, I guess even though that they're like a sexual lover, sexual partner, there's this aspect of almost parent-like relationship as well, because they want to see you do your best, live your best life, but more so do work, do, and that could be, raising children if that's what your life is about. That could be creating art. It could be building a revolution to help save the environment. Like whatever is your, people talk about the sole purpose, but really, yeah, like whatever you feel is your thing to bring to the world. And it could be something you're really passionate about. It could be something you're just really naturally good at, or, usually it's somewhere in between. And I think if you don't heed the call, I don't like the word punish, but in my experience, it's kind of like sounds really funny, but almost like they're getting you to do work, kind of rewarding you in the way, because they're there to obviously reward you with pleasure and, because they're a lover, but also there to get you to do work. And if you're not doing the work part of it, they might take the pleasure away. And it can end up being quite catastrophic in my experience when you don't respect the lover, the lover concept, or even the person. So I'm not saying I've, intentionally disrespected anyone in the past, but, I've definitely not appreciated people. I've just been, stupid in certain actions of mine in the past, and just been naive about certain things in just human relationships. And I think because there's this, magical aspect to my relationships, I think this concept really shows up and really just has taken apart parts of my life. And there's this big aspect around, so there's a Rune Hagelaz, which is all about restructuring your life. So it's the idea of like a hailstorm of, knocking everything down, of like catastrophe, to make way for something new, to rechange your old patterns. And the tarot card, the Tower, is a similar concept as I understand it. And I feel like the Scarlet Lover is a real catalyst for this idea of, kind of a breaking everything down. And Michael Kelly, actually, you can sign up to his Patreon. He's got amazing podcasts. And he was talking about in his most recent podcast, the idea of putting yourself into uncomfortable situations intentionally by your own willpower, so that the universe or, your Scarlet Lover or your higher self or whatever else doesn't do it for you. Especially people, there's a big movement, at the moment people are waking up and people want to be, these conscious entrepreneurs, and this is amazing. But if you really are feeling like that's what you're meant to be doing, you probably have some sort of this guardian aspect with you, attached to you, working with you, working through you, whatever. And if you're not doing, your side of things and not really putting yourself consistently in uncomfortable situations and letting the pleasure and the hedonistic side of yourself overpower the actual, the pioneer and things like that, then it's going to rebalance stuff, and quite catastrophically in my experience. So my working with this now is starting to learn the promptings of it, what it really wants me to get me to do right at this moment, what I need, whether it's that balance of I need more chaos, my life is too structured, everything's too rigid, and I'm too comfortable in what I'm doing, and I need to find a way to introduce new things, new ideas, and get things done that I've been meaning to, and patterns, and even add a bit of randomness and spontaneity so that weird synchronicity can weave in. There's not enough of that. Otherwise, on the other side of it, if, my life is too chaotic and, like in my experience of, I've been in both cases of just having one single monogamous lover for a long period of time, to having multiple lovers too, and that, some of us all interact together. And, there's beautiful and amazing benefits of both sides, but I feel like everything has to balance out. And in my experience, having a lot of different lovers at once, and to really be able to give to all of them, quite equally, is quite exhausting, and it took away from a lot of my own self-work. And and it's finding what you need, and want, I guess, and really desire, from, your own inner work, when I say inner work, that can be, meditation, that can be working with runes, it can be working with just divination systems, just finding, I've explained in different podcasts before how I think important it is to find like a good structural, traditional-ish paradigm to do that within. But you can check my other podcasts or future podcasts for that. But this concept, the Scarlet Lover, is there to keep you on track and throw you off track. It's to help you grow, to like ignite your fire for what you desire, not just from a lover but from life, and to make you leap over chasms that you wouldn't have done before, and really just help you to grow and find new ways to manifest your willpower in the world, and to have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. It's on the other side of that realizing that there's going to be the times where it's not going to be so fun or enjoyable or pleasant. There's going to be some really dark times, especially that everything has to balance out. So the more pleasure and amazing experiences you're going to get, it could flip in certain ways. To be honest, I don't think it could flip. It will flip in certain ways, but it's up to you, I guess, which way that flips, what the results are from that, and how you handle it. And I think that lens of just seeing that it's for your higher good and it's what you need right now, not necessarily what you want, that is going to help you through that. And it's definitely helping me at the moment. I've been through some interesting times lately. As I said, with the breakup recently, it was definitely the right decision, I feel, and I'm the one who instigated the large part of it, but it was definitely a mutual thing. But there's just come up a lot around it, as much as I try to develop myself all the time. Like, I've definitely had some not so graceful times during this period, and it's just what happens. And it's trying to just come back to that and see this all as growth, and see this all as just a process that you're going to, always come out better. And I've always come out better. I've had way, way darker times, and you probably have too, And if this is your darkest time yet, then good for you. When you rebound from this, is you're going to rebound even stronger than you ever have before. And that's what I feel. The darkest times have rebounded. I talk a lot in because I run kids workshops as well with a company called Beautiful Minds, and there's a lot of kids that have kind of got a bit of social anxiety, and because it could be like preteen girls, preteen boys, teenage boys and girls, and they're struggling at school. It's a hard time to be a kid, social media and stuff like that, and just teaching them that it's okay not to be okay. And the way I kind of teach it is talking about that we love food, right? We love eating, and the reason why we eat is because we get hungry. And so no one really enjoys being hungry, but the more hungry you are, the more you will enjoy your food. So everything has to balance out. And just as if you care about something, you're going to get really excited about that thing, but it's really easy for that excitement to turn to nervousness and anxiety. But it's that same like hyper, really fiery, jittery energy, and it's uncomfortable. But it's that polarity that makes life interesting. If you're just in your warm, temperate, I kind of like this thing that I'm going to do. I kind of like what I'm doing for work. I kind of like this person that I'm seeing and that I'm dating. Don't like them that much, but it's safe, right? It's safe, it's comfortable. We don't experience those polarities as much. So I guess you just have to make a choice. And I feel like people that really bring in this Scarlet Lover to their life, whether by choice or just because they're called, depends which way you look at it, they're people that really experience this polarity. But I feel like it's those kind of people that really just get the most out of life, because you have both sides of it, right? And it's experiencing these polarities that makes you grow and makes you realize that it just has to be that way, because without the cold, you don't appreciate the hot, and it's all that, those kind of things. So there's actually a really cool, I've got Apophis here with me. I'm just trying to find the page. Here we go, found it. So yeah, just a little snippet from Apophis that I'll read, and it talks about, so what it says is, however, we hold that sorrow gives value and meaning to life and is a powerful galvanizing force. If you feel sorrow, it signifies that something in your life was valuable and precious enough for you to feel its loss keenly. This is a positive thing. So it's this whole idea of desire and sense of beauty. And I think that's just a perfect way to explain the Scarlet Lover. It's your idea of what is beautiful in the world and what you desire to see and experience and feel more of in the world. And the world, or that concept, using that to get you to move in this world, to keep you moving, to keep you growing, and to make you your best possible self that you could ever be, I guess. And this is, in a lot of different mythologies, you see this with Shiva and Shakti, yogis that resonate with that. You see Odin and Freya in Norse mythology. And so it depends how you view it. If you are, attracted to men and women, then you might experience this, the masculinity and femininity in different ways from different people. And you don't have to have a male or female body to, I guess, have these experiences through those type of people. So it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, how it works like that. It's just this force of desire that drives us. So it'll probably show up for you very differently to the way it's showing up for me, maybe similarly. Like the story that I've been telling on Facebook and Instagram, I guess I can't go into a lot of details on there. So maybe in this and future podcasts, if anyone wants to know, I can go into more detail about it. But an example is that girl that I mentioned that used to draw her dreams and talk about ghosts. There was definitely that Scarlet Lover kind of feeling from her. I was in a nightclub in Brisbane one night, and I remember seeing her on the dance floor, and she was dancing and just gave me this little smirk, and it was this mischievous little grin that for me has become this, real connection with that Scarlet Lover for me, which is this kind of, like this mischievous trickster archetype. And so I ended up going home with her that night, and it was the next morning hanging out with her and hanging out with her the next day, talking about her drawings that she had all in a room, and talking about her experiences with these ghosts that sent me on this huge journey of trying to find ghosts. And, if it was just some random person on the street that I didn't give any authority to, I just wouldn't have given a second glance. But it was this, girl that seemed, quite sane in most ways. I have a very different view on sanity these days, but back then, I was pretty skeptical about most things. But also, she was an object of my desire as well. Not an object. I don't mean an object, but she was, she fulfilled that kind of, desire for me. I really desired her and I found her very attractive, and that was also a drawing point for me. So that she was a big catalyst, and she was only in my life a very small time. I think we caught up once after that. Just for circumstances that I just don't think she was meant to be there as a big part of my life. She was there to kind of prompt me. I went on a bit of a ghost hunting trip for the next few months, trying to find stuff on the internet, everything from, knocking the corners of rooms to try to find a ghost, to like going to cemeteries in the middle of the night. Yeah, I did some weird stuff. But it was that one night through a lover that sent me on that journey. And that was a catalyst for lots of other stuff since then. And and the girl that I'm about to talk about in the story, I met in pretty much the exact same kind of situation. I met her in a nightclub, and it was that same smirk. But this girl ended up being almost the complete opposite of that. She ended up being in my life for quite a long time, and quite a potent, strong version of that. And and I'll probably talk about that more in the story that I'm gonna put in. But this entity is a big part of my life, and for me, at least personally, lovers have been a huge catalyst for my self-development. And some people might just not have that same connection, you know. Some people might get their growth and development from other things. But for me, my, sexual lovers have been the biggest catalyst to my growth. And I'm so appreciative. I'm not going to name them. If any of them are listening, over the years, I've had such amazingly beautiful, powerful women, some in particular. Thank you. Thank you so much to, just being a part of my life and helping me grow. And I think that's what this is as well. This is just a dedication to, the higher concept of this and this entity or this force that has been part of my life, that I've actually got a tattoo on my left hand dedicated to. The tattoo on my hand is a mixture of runes. It took me 6 months to develop. It was actually inspired by someone in particular, but it ended up developing into something just beyond anything I could have imagined. And it's my dedication to this concept, to the Scarlet Lover, to the other, to whatever has kind of been there my whole time, whatever's watching my back, is pushing me into these uncomfortable situations. So I think, that's what this is for me, this podcast, this story, maybe eventually the book that I planned on writing. And so I think that will do for this podcast. This has probably been the hardest podcast I've ever done, I guess, because it's such a personal concept, a weird concept, and something that I guess I worry that I'm not explaining properly, or it might be perceived in the wrong way, because I don't want to be perceived that, because, through this process as well, I've equally thought of it at different times in my life as one being a super enlightened, very advanced, grown up version of seeing love and relationships, right? But at other times, I've equally seen it as this really immature, almost Peter Pan, I'm never going to grow up, I'm just going to always have, different lovers kind of thing as well. So I don't know, which one, what is right. It's all relative. And my view of relationships and love in general is always changing and evolving. And what I wanted, 5 years ago is very different to what I want now. And just like anyone, I'm learning that and getting a better idea, solidifying what I want from a partner, whether that's a temporary partner or, a longer term partner. But this concept has always been behind it. And I think this is what drives that desire anyway. And I'm really interested to see how it shows up in other people's lives, because we're all on the same journey, right? We're all just trying to figure out life, especially when it comes to love. It's the biggest driving force in the world. And sexuality, sexual desire, it's such a potent force in everything. And I'm like you, I'm just trying to figure it out and just trying to do my best. So I hope this has made a bit of sense. I hope this has shed a little bit of light onto how I perceive that concept. I will, very likely maybe make more of this about the same concept or different aspects of it. And I'll continue with my story on Facebook and Instagram very soon. So if you want to be a part of that and read that, just head to my website. So you can just go to rune.yoga, so www.rune.yoga or runeyoga.org. You'll find all the information on there, link to my Instagram, Facebook, and all that good stuff. So this has been Daniel Cumming, Rune Yoga, Embodying Magic. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you soon. Ryan to Rune.